He hadn't spoken a single word in 12 long years. Doctors called him a lost cause. His father, a billionaire, spent everything trying to bring him back, but nothing worked. Until one day, a 9-year-old girl walked into his silent room and saw what no doctor, no machine, and no genius ever could. What she discovered inside that lifeless body would shock the world and prove that sometimes miracles aren't found in hospitals. They're found in the heart of a child who refuses to stop believing. The Caldwell Mansion stood tall on the edge of New York City, surrounded by high walls, guarded gates, and silence so deep it felt like time itself had stopped there. The world knew Richard Caldwell as a ruthless billionaire, a man whose name meant power and success. But behind those marble walls, he was just a father, a broken man living in the shadow of his greatest loss. His only son, Ethan Caldwell, once a bright, cheerful boy full of laughter and dreams, now lay motionless on a hospital bed placed beside the grand window of his room. The accident had happened 12 years ago. A rainy night, screeching tires, and one moment that changed everything. Ethan survived, but the doctors said he would never walk, never talk, never move again. They called it a miracle he was even alive. Since that day, Richard's life had lost its color. The man who once signed million-dollar deals now spent his days sitting silently beside Ethan's bed, holding his limp hand and whispering stories of the outside world. "It's sunny today, son. Just how you used to like it," he would say with a trembling voice. Ethan never replied. His eyes remained open but distant, staring blankly ahead, as if trapped somewhere far away. Over the years, Richard hired the best doctors from around the world, neurologists, therapists, even experimental researchers, hoping someone would bring back his boy. But after countless failed treatments, every doctor gave the same answer. "His body lives, Mr. Caldwell, but his mind is gone." Those words shattered Richard's heart every time. He dismissed half the staff, locked most rooms, and turned his mansion into a world of whispers and shadows. The only sound left was the slow, steady rhythm of Ethan's breathing machine. Then, one gray afternoon, a new face appeared, a small girl holding her mother's hand. Her name was Lily, just 9 years old, with bright eyes and a fearless smile. Her mother had been hired temporarily to help around the mansion, and Lily tagged along quietly. But when she wandered into Ethan's room and saw the still young man lying there, she didn't see tragedy. She saw someone lonely. She smiled, stepped closer, and whispered, "Hi, I'm Lily. I think you need a friend." And for the first time in 12 years, Ethan's eyes blinked. From that day on, the mansion that once echoed with silence began to hear something new. The gentle, cheerful voice of a little girl. Every afternoon after school, Lily would run up the grand staircase, her small feet tapping against the cold marble floors. The servants would smile as she passed, carrying her sketchbook and crayons. "Going to see your friend again, Miss Lily?" They'd tease. She'd just grin and say, "He gets bored when I'm late." In Ethan's room, she'd pull up a small chair beside his bed and start chatting. She talked about everything: how her cat refused to eat fish, how she tripped during recess, how her teacher said her handwriting looked like spaghetti. She laughed, she drew, she even sang. And every time she did, she thought she saw something a flicker in Ethan's eyes, the tiniest spark of life. "Mom says you can't hear me," she whispered one day, "but I think you can." That day, Lily held up 2 crayons, one red, one blue. "If you like red, look at it," she said softly. Ethan's eyes moved, just slightly. "But enough!" Lily froze, her mouth open in shock. "You saw that, didn't you?" She tried again the next day, and the next, testing him with colors, shapes, and pictures. Every time, Ethan's eyes moved, slowly, carefully, always with meaning. Excited, Lily ran to Richard, who sat in his study surrounded by piles of medical reports and hopeless diagnoses. "Mr. Caldwell, your son, he answered me. He chose red!" she exclaimed, her eyes shining with truth. Richard's heart skipped a beat, but years of disappointment made him cautious. He smiled kindly and said, "That's sweet, Lily. But sometimes our minds see what our hearts want to believe." But Lily wasn't imagining things. She came back every day, developing her own little code, 1 blink for yes, 2 for no. She practiced questions. "Are you happy today?" "Blink. Do you like my drawings?" "Blink, blink." She giggled. "Okay, that's a no, huh? I'll draw better tomorrow." Days turned into weeks. Richard began noticing something different. Ethan's eyes followed Lily when she spoke. For the first time in years, there was life in his gaze. Something was happening. Something no doctor had ever seen before. And it all began with the friendship of a little girl who refused to stop talking. The next few weeks changed everything inside the Caldwell mansion. What had once been a place of quiet sorrow was now filled with soft laughter, crayons, and the voice of a little girl who refused to give up. Lily's eye code became stronger each day. She noticed that when Ethan looked slightly to the right, it meant yes, and when his eyes moved left, it meant no. When he blinked twice quickly, it meant stop, and when he blinked slowly, it meant happy. She had found a language no one else had seen. One evening, as the sunset painted the sky orange, Lily ran to Richard's study again. But this time, she didn't just come with excitement. She brought proof. She had written down Ethan's eye movements for every question she'd asked him over the week. "Mr. Caldwell, he understands everything," she said, placing the paper on his desk. "He's answering me with his eyes." Richard frowned. At first he had heard so many false hopes before, but something in Lily's voice felt different. It wasn't pity, it was certainty, so he followed her to Ethan's room. Lily stood by the bed holding 2 flashcards, one with a sun, one with a moon. "Ethan," she said softly. "Is it daytime?" Ethan's eyes moved instantly toward the sun card. Richard gasped. "Try again," he whispered, barely breathing. "Ethan, is it night?" she asked next. This time, his eyes stayed still. Richard covered his mouth. His heart pounded. He answered you," he whispered in disbelief. Lily smiled through tears. "He's been answering me for weeks." Richard called his doctors immediately. They brought in a neurologist from Boston, Dr. Henry Walsh, one of the best in the country. After several hours of testing using an eye-tracking computer, Dr. Walsh turned to Richard with eyes full of wonder. "Mr. Caldwell," he said quietly, "your son's brain activity is completely normal. He's conscious. He understands everything you say. He's been trapped inside his own body all this time." Richard sank to his knees beside Ethan's bed, holding his hand and sobbing. "I'm so sorry, son. I'm so sorry." And for the first time in 12 years, Ethan blinked slowly, deliberately, his sign for happy. After that night, everything inside the Caldwell mansion changed. The once lonely halls were now filled with voices, laughter, and life again. For the first time in 12 long years, Richard felt hope. Doctors and therapists returned, this time not to test Ethan, but to learn from him. Using Lily's simple eye language, they began building a more advanced communication system. With technology, they connected Ethan to an eye-tracking computer, a screen that turned his eye movements into letters and words. The very first message Ethan typed was short, but powerful. "Thank you." "Lily!" Everyone in the room froze. Lily covered her mouth, tears rolling down her cheeks. "You don't have to thank me," she whispered. "You're my friend." The news spread like wildfire. Little girl helps paralyzed billionaire's son communicate after 12 years. TV stations, journalists and reporters flooded the mansion's gates. But Lily didn't care about fame. All she wanted was to talk to her friend. She and Ethan spent hours speaking through the computer. They laughed, shared stories, and even began working on music. Lily would hum, and Ethan would pick notes using his eyes. Together, they created a tune, slow, emotional, and filled with meaning. Richard named it The Sound of Silence. The melody spread across the internet, touching millions of hearts. People from all over the world sent letters to the Caldwell family, saying how the story gave them hope for their own loved ones. Richard was deeply moved. He met with doctors, engineers, and scientists to create something greater, a foundation to help others like Ethan. It was called the Lily and Ethan Foundation, dedicated to developing new communication systems for paralyzed patients. The grand opening ceremony. Reporters asked Lily how she discovered the secret. She smiled shyly and said, "I just talked to him, and I listened when no one else did." The crowd went silent. Even the cameras stopped clicking for a moment, because in her innocence, Lily had taught the world something powerful sometimes. It doesn't take science to create a miracle. It takes a heart that believes someone can still hear you. A year later, the story of Ethan Caldwell and Lily had touched millions across the world. But inside the mansion, things were simple, again filled with laughter, music, and light. What once had been a place of grief now felt like a home again. Ethan had made remarkable progress. Though still unable to move his body, his eyes and mind worked faster than ever. He used his communication device to talk, to write messages, and even to compose music. And Lily, the little girl who had started it all, was still by his side, visiting almost every day after school. She had become like a sister to him. Together, they planned new projects for the Lily and Ethan Foundation, recording short videos to encourage families of patients around the world. Their message was simple yet powerful. Never stop trying to reach the ones who seem unreachable. One evening, Richard organized a charity event to raise funds for their foundation. The hall was filled with hundreds of guests, all waiting to see the boy who had once been lost in silence. On the grand stage stood a piano, and beside it, Lily, holding Ethan's small communication device. The lights dimmed. Lily took a deep breath and said into the microphone, "This song was written by someone who couldn't speak, but whose heart never stopped talking." She pressed a button, and Ethan's computer began to play their song, The Sound of Silence. The melody filled the air, soft, haunting, beautiful. Every note carried emotion, pain, love, and hope. The audience was silent, tears glistening in their eyes. Richard stood in the front row, his heart swelling with pride. He looked at his son, the boy doctors had given up on, now speaking to the world through music. When the song ended, the crowd rose to their feet. A thunderous applause filled the hall. Lily turned to Ethan, smiling through tears. "See?" she whispered. "You're talking to everyone now." Ethan blinked twice, his way of saying thank you. And in that moment, Richard realized something profound. It wasn't money or medicine or science that had saved his son. It was a child's faith, the kind that never doubts, never gives up, and never stops believing that even in silence, there's always a voice waiting to be heard.